Well, good afternoon, Winkets. It's your granddad again, and here we are back again to read a little bit more of The Adventures of the Little Wooden Horse. There he goes. Look at him down there, looking all in his radiating glory. Now, we are at chapter 17. Pirate Jackie and Bill Blackpatch. Pirate Jackie and Bill Blackpatch. Well, before we start that, we need to go back and have a look at what we were doing. The little wooden horse swims the ocean was the previous one, okay? The little wooden horse swims the ocean. And remember how he was swimming across the ocean? And remember how he was chased by the white horses of the ocean? And Grandad said that was probably the sea, the tops of the waves, the white of the tops of the waves, and indeed I think it was. But they were called white horses, weren't they? And they danced all around the little wooden horse. And he was saved out of the ocean by a particular gentleman by the name of Pirate Jackie. And how the ship that Pirate Jackie had won him in a game of lots, and Pirate Jackie kept him in his sea chest, and how Pirate Jackie was not a particularly nice sort of a person, but he won him fair and square in the game after being saved out of the water. And the ship foundered, that is, it sank. It sank in the waves of the ocean, and how our little wooden horsey, managed to escape out of the sea chest and found Pirate Jackie floating almost dead in the water and brought him ashore to finally manage to get him ashore. And so here we go. And the last words of that chapter were, after he'd fallen asleep, that lasted until far into the next day on the seashore, where he came ashore with he rescued Pirate Jackie to the same shore, and he fell asleep on the seashore. And his last thoughts were, when the morning comes, was his last waking thought, I will set out through the forest to find Uncle Pedder. Okay, so he's getting back home finally by the sound of it, but we've got the new one here, chapter 17, Pirate Jackie and Bill Blackpatch. So here we go. When the little wooden horse opened his eyes the next morning to find the hot sun above him, the warm sand below him, the birds singing, the waves lapping gently a few yards away, and not a vestige of a silver seahorse to be seen, he felt so happy that he laid back his ears, kicked his hind wheels high in the air. When he remembered that he had swum the whole way across the ocean, he neighed with joy, and even the thought of his lost fortune could not damp his spirits. He could not bear to wait another moment before taking the road back through the forest to Uncle Pedder. So he looked around for Pirate Jackie to say goodbye. Pirate Jackie had lighted a fire to dry his clothes. He was sitting beside it, gazing solemnly out to sea. Why, where are you going? He asked the little wooden horse when he came up to say goodbye. Home, through the forest, of course, said the little wooden horse joyfully. Pirate Jackie stared at him and then chuckled. You've a long way to go before you get home, my little wooden horse, he said, not unkindly. That means he didn't say it unkindly, but he was just saying you've got a long way to go. Do you really want to swim again so soon? Don't you know that this is not the other side of the ocean, but a little island in the middle of the sea? I know it well, for I have been here before. So he's not quite home yet, okay? He's not quite on his way home yet. The little wooden horse heard Pirate Jackie's words, and he thought his wooden heart would break. he followed the sailor along the shore till they had walked around the whole island. When he saw that it was indeed true, it was only a very small island after all. There was nothing to be seen on either side but water. "Never mind," said Pirate Jackie, when he saw the tears pouring out of the painted eyes of the little wooden horse. "Perhaps after all you will be glad one day that you came to this island, for I am going to reward you for saving my life. Come with me." Hello? Hello. What's Pirate Jackie going to do? Trying hard to control his sobs, the little wooden horse followed Pirate Jackie up the steep rocks of the little hill in the centre of the island. Through the bushes and long thick grass they stumbled and pushed their way till they came out of the trees, and when they were nearly at the top, Pirate Jackie dived into a cranny between two rocks. You know what a cranny is? A cranny is a little split. Like if you've got two rocks, it's the little split in between. So he dived into it means he hopped, he put his hand in or managed to even jump into this little slot between the rocks. "Follow me," he told the little wooden horse. The little wooden horse followed Pirate Jackie down the cranny till they came to a flat rock at the end. This rock was marked with a cross. Pirate Jackie pushed the rock with his hand, and it swung back into darkness. "What's this? A secret place, George? You've read about secret places before with Rupert, haven't you? Okay. Whatever can this be?" thought the little wooden horse when he saw Pirate Jackie squeeze through the space and disappear inside the mountain. He felt as though he were going down the mines again, but he did not want to be left behind, so he squeezed through the crack after Pirate Jackie and found himself in an enormous cave. Inside the cave, the little wooden horse blinked, gasped, and rubbed his painted eyes in astonishment. You know what astonishment is? In surprise, in huge surprise. The blue stripes on his little round body paled with wonder, while his 4 wooden wheels set up such a tremble and rattle of excitement that Pirate Jackie turned around and sharply told him to be quiet. For all about the cave, in piles and heaps, in caskets and crates, and in boxes, was such a treasure as the little wooden horse had never dreamed of. A secret treasure hoard, George. This is what Rupert used to look for, didn't he? He was often looking for a treasure hoard, but this is a real one. Piles of golden coins, sparkling jewels, emeralds, pearls, rubies, diamonds, all flashing out of the darkness as the little wooden horse winked at the little wooden horse, winking at him with their sparkling eyes, saying, "Take us, fill yourself with us. We are yours." Pirate Jackie nodded to the little wooden horse to help himself. The sailor sat down on a cask and gazed around the treasure chamber, while the little wooden horse, without more ado, whipped off his head and scuttled round the golden heaps, picking here diamonds, there pearls, there golden coins, till his little body was filled to bursting point, and he felt so rich he could hardly contain himself. How Uncle Peter's eyes would pop out of his head at the sight of such a fortune. They would never be in want again. Wow, what a treasure hoard. They could live like kings forever, him and Uncle Peter. Pirate Jackie sat smiling kindly as the little wooden horse crammed himself with treasure and told him to go on till he could carry no more. "You will never get such a chance again," said he. "Only one more fellow knows of this cave, and that's a rascally sailor called Bill Blackpatch." Bill Blackpatch, eh? "Who is no friend of mine," he said. We found it together when we were on the same ship a long while ago and stopped at this island for water. We didn't want to tell the rest of the crew about it or be seen with diamonds and pearls in our pockets, so we left it alone. But each of us vowed we would come back one day and collect the treasure before the other could get at it. It looks like Pirate Jakey got there first. Then we signed on different ships, and till today I have not been able to return to this island. I have lain awake at night, thinking of Black Patch coming back and stealing the treasure from under my nose. So when the ship went down, I decided to dodge the lifeboats and swim for the island, which I knew was hereabouts. As you know, my strength gave out quickly, and if it had not been for you, my little wooden horse, I would never have arrived at all. When I opened my eyes and found myself on the shore last night and saw you asleep beside me, I staggered up the hill to this cave to see if Bill Blackpatch had been here before me. Luckily for me, he has not, so you and I will make our fortunes. I mean to cut down trees and make a boat and enough boxes to hold all the treasure safely. Then, when a fine day comes and we are ready, we will row across to the farther shore. And then, if you wish, my little wooden horse, we can part company and you can take your part of the treasure back to your Uncle Pedder. Oh, so he's not a bad sort of a bloke after all, is he? He's looking after the little wooden horse. That's really good. The little wooden horse was overjoyed with this idea. He promised to help his utmost with the making of the boat and the chests so that they would soon be ready to carry the treasure away across the sea. Because it's one thing to have treasure, guys, but you've still got to be able to get it away to your place. It's no good to you if it's in a place where A, you can't spend it, and B, you can't move it, because you've got to be able to move it to a place of security. That is a place which only you have access to, like a bank, like a bank. Or your bedroom with the door closed and locked. Okay? Pirate Jackie and the little wooden horse worked night and day, making the boat and the chests. Pirate Jackie cut down trees. The little wooden horse dragged them to the shore and went back for more. He knocked in the pegs with his strong wooden wheels and was more useful than 10 sailors. Presently, they had made a beautiful brown boat called the Treasure Trove and two strong oars with which to row her. Pirate Jackie cut down more trees with his sailor's knife and made 12 strong chests, which the little wooden horse carried down to the boat. Then they had to fill them with the treasure. They were too heavy to carry up and down the mountain when they were full, so the little wooden horse emptied himself of his own fortune, which he hid carefully in the prow of the boat, that's in the front end of the boat, and scuttled up and down, filling his little wooden body from the heaps in the cave, and taking the treasure thus down to the shore to be emptied into the chests. Pirate Jackie did the same thing, filling his pockets, his boots, and his red cap with the coins and jewels on his journeys up and down. Now, I think I've got a couple of pictures to show you. That's a picture there of the little wooden horse when he first saw the treasure. Look at him. Look at him. Looking at all the treasure in the sacks and everything laying on the floor. He was absolutely amazed with all that treasure. And there we have, he was more useful than 10 sailors. There goes the little wooden horse. There he goes there helping Pirate Jackie, making the boat and making all the stuff they required to get the treasure off the island. He was more useful than 10 sailors. Okay? So he's a very diligent, hard-working little horsey. Okay. Presently the cave was empty, but all the chests were full. On the rocky door at the end of the cranny, Pirate Jackie wrote, Pirate Jackie, his mark, with the picture of a dagger as a sign for Bill Blackpatch when he should come. Underneath, the little wooden horse drew the picture of a wheel, with the little wooden horse, his mark, because he thought it looked fine and daring. Now Pirate Jackie had to make lids for the chests and strong pegs to peg them down. The little wooden horse dreamed day and night of the surprise he was going to bring to Uncle Peter. One day, when the lids were nearly finished, the little wooden horse saw the sailor, as he thought, some way off among the trees. Pirate Jackie, he called to make himself known. But to his surprise, the sailor immediately began to run and soon disappeared into the wood. Oh boy, this sounds like another pirate. I wonder who that could be. By and by, when they met upon the shore, the little wooden horse, very puzzled, asked, Why did you run away from me in the woods just now, Pirate Jackie, when I called out to you among the trees? Pirate Jackie looked at him in great surprise. Why, my little wooden horse, I wouldn't run away from you, and I wasn't in the woods just now. I was up on the mountain cutting pegs. Well, that is funny, said the little wooden horse, for I felt sure I saw you, red cap, blue coat and all. You must have dreamed it, my little wooden horse, said Pirate Jackie. Oh, I've got a bad feeling about this, guys. Now the chests were finished, and until the moon rose, they worked hard loading the boat, for the weather was fine, and they meant to start the next day. The little wooden horse went to bed so happy he could scarcely sleep. But when they went down to the shore in the morning, what should they find but a great hole in the bottom of the boat, a hole that had not been there when they went to bed. Oh dear, how unfortunate we are, cried Pirate Jackie. The tide lifted the boat in the night and dashed her on a rock. Now we shall not be able to start till I've mended it, and that will take me 3 whole days. He set to work directly while the little wooden horse fetched and carried and made himself as useful as he knew how. When he'd done all he could, and Pirate Jackie was still at work, the little wooden horse wandered around the island saying goodbye to his favourite places, for after all he had worked hard and had been very happy there. He was wandering down the shore at the far end of the island when something under the bushes of a tiny creek caught his painted eye. He went up to see what the strange object could be, pushed away under the bushes, and as though somebody wanted to hide it, it was a boat. The little wooden horse examined the boat all over very curiously, very, very suspiciously, and looking at it, very interested in this boat. It was green with 2 green oars, and it looked as though it had been used quite lately, around about now. It didn't look like it had been lying there for a long time. Now, whoever can it belong to, wondered the little wooden horse, trundling pensively back along the shore. Pensively? That means he's a wee bit surprised and confused. He's thinking about what he's seen. Now whoever can it belong to? Wondered the little wooden horse, trundling pensively back along the shore. When he reached Pirate Jackie's side, he found the sailor had finished mending the boat. Everything was ready to start the next day. The little wooden horse decided to say nothing about the strange little green boat that he had found, but to keep a sharp lookout all that night. So he never closed his painted eyes at all, but lay with his wooden ears a prick, his attention fixed on the seashore. His ears are pricked. That means that his ears were all pricked up like a dog does when it's listening for something. When it goes, oh, it's looking around and it's listening. It's got its ears up and it's looking, you know. Just before dawn, he heard a slight noise outside, near the boat, as though somebody were trying to walk very silently, carrying something heavy at the same time. The little wooden horse got up quietly and trundled down to the shore to see what could be happening. There he saw a very strange thing. Pirate Jackie, in his red cap and blue jersey, carrying chest after chest away from the treasure trove and dumping it in the little green boat, which was pulled up on the shore a few yards away. Now that is a very funny thing, said the little wooden horse, for whatever can Pirate Jackie want with two boats? And why did he hide the first and say nothing about it? And why is he putting it away all the chests that we packed so carefully into the green boat? Does he mean to go away in the dark and leave me behind? But at that moment the sailor turned round and the little wooden horse saw that it was not Pirate Jackie after all. In spite of his red cap and blue jersey, but a sailor with a black patch over one eye and a big red moustache. So he's another one. That's what I thought. That's what Grandad was thinking. This strange sailor did not see the little wooden horse, for he was far too busy taking chests out of the brown boat and putting them into the green one. The little wooden horse hurried back up the shore and soon found Pirate Jackie asleep and snoring under a bush. Pirate Jackie, wake up, he told him. A strange sailor has come and is stealing all the treasure. Pirate Jackie was up in a moment and running down to the shore, where the strange sailor had just lifted the last chest out of the treasure trove and was struggling with it towards his own little green boat. Bill Blackpatch, roared Pirate Jackie. Pirate Jackie, shouted the other sailor, dropping the chest in his fright, and they fell upon each other like two wolves. So they started fighting. You can imagine why, because they both wanted the treasure. The little wooden horse had never seen such a fight. He kept well out of the way as the two punched and tore and bit and buffeted at each other. The sand flew in all directions. Now they wallowed in the sea, trying to push each other into the deep water. Now they struggled far up the shore, and all the while their shouts and arguments could have been heard from the other side of the island. So they're obviously very angry that they'd run into one another, and you can understand why. Each one wanted all the treasure. The treasure is mine, I tell you. I came first. But we found it together. I claimed it. I claimed it too. It's mine, not yours. Yours, it belongs to me, I tell you. That's what they're all saying to one another, backwards and forwards to one another. As there was nothing else he could do while he waited for them to stop, the little wooden horse made himself busy fetching the chests from Bill Blackpatch's boat and putting them back into the treasure trove. When he'd fetched 6, however, he became thoughtful and carried no more. I've got an idea what he's thinking, actually. I think I've got an idea. But we'll wait and see. The two sailors fought until the sun rose, when they were so sore and bruised and battered that by common consent they agreed to stop and rest for a little while before continuing to fight. But they did not stop arguing, each claiming that the treasure was his alone, although neither of them had any good reason for saying so. At last, the little wooden horse could bear it no longer. "Oh, my dear sirs," he began, "I know I am only a little wooden horse, and a quiet one, and I do not like quarrelling at all. But it seems to me that the treasure belongs as much to Bill Blackpatch as it does to Pirate Jackie, and as much to Pirate Jackie as it does to Bill. Seeing that you both found it together at the same time, now with 6 chests each, you will both make your fortunes 10 times over. And I suggest that we get into our different boats with 6 chests each abroad and row away wherever we will. For as for myself, I am very anxious to find my way back to my dear master, Uncle Peter, and stay forever at his side. So that seems a good idea, that each sailor gets half the treasure. That sounds like a pretty equitable way of finishing it. You know what equitable means? It means a fairly reasonable and a fairly fair way to sort it out. Each gets half the treasure. When the 2 pirates heard this very sensible argument, they agreed at least to do as the little wooden horse had said. They agreed at last to do as the little wooden horse had said. So they picked themselves up off the sand and got into their boats, each with 6 chests. And while Bill Blackpatch rowed around the back of the island and away over the sea from where he had come, Pirate Jackie and the little wooden horse left the island behind and rowed in the direction that they believed the farther shore to be. The farther shore. The faraway shore to be. And that is the end of chapter 17. And now we have chapter 18. Chapter 18. And guess what chapter 18 is called? Chapter 18 is called The Little Wooden Horse Goes Home. That sounds pretty good, doesn't it? The little wooden horse goes home. And there's a picture there of the little wooden horse and Pirate Jackie. And see the waves there, how they've got white tops on them? Those were probably the horses that were giving our little wooden horse and the boat such a hard time. They were probably just the tops, the spume on the waves. It's called spume, or it's white tops on the waves. But they appeared to be like horses. Okay, Pirate Jackie rowed for a night and a day till at last they reached the shore of which the little wooden horse had dreamed for so long. His wooden heart beat fiercely with excitement when the boat touched the shore, and he found himself quite close to the port where he had begun his journey across the ocean with the elephant so long ago. "Well, I'm sorry that we are to part, my little wooden horse," said Pirate Jackie when they stood side by side on firm ground. "Good luck to your journeys. Perhaps we shall meet again one day." "Perhaps we shall," said the little wooden horse, though he did not think it likely, for he meant to stay by Uncle Peter's side for ever and ever. However, he wished Pirate Jackie good luck and farewell, waved his wooden legs in turn, and trundled away to find the road by the canal that would lead him home. He avoided the port this time. He did not want the sailors to play any more tricks on him, lifting him high up in the air on cranes and setting him down on strange ships that took him over the sea away from Uncle Peter. So he trundled around the outside of the port till he came to the canal, and there he set out along the towpath that he remembered so well from his race to the port so many long months ago. You remember when he raced to the port, towing the big boat full of props for the mines, made of wooden props. The barge, the big barge. The little wooden horse was happy as he hurried along. His wooden body was crammed too full of treasure even to rattle, but his 4 wooden wheels made a cheerful noise that was pleasant to hear. Presently he saw ahead of him a familiar sight. A great barge had finished its business in the port, swinging up the canal, towed by a strong black horse on the bank. The little wooden horse's heart warmed as he saw it, and he thought of the great race he had run with the Margarita and Farmer Max behind him. He had never seen the black horse before, but something about the lines of the barge made him look and look again to make certain, for it was the Margarita. The little wooden horse quickened his pace till he was trundling along side by side with the big black horse, and all of a sudden there came a cry from the people on board the barge. "See there! See, it's our little wooden horse!" The horse drew the Margarita close in to the bank, and in a moment the little wooden horse was on board among his friends of the canal, who were all talking at once, all petting him and asking him questions. That sounds good, doesn't it, eh? Among friends. It's always good to be among friends. "What happened to you that day?" they asked. "We waited for you all that evening and the next, but you never came. Every journey we have made since, we have searched the whole port for you, but nobody could tell us where you had gone." They insisted on paying him the money they had owed him, and although the little wooden horse was rich now, he did not like to hurt their feelings by refusing to accept it. So instead he gave the bargeman's wife a very beautiful sparkling ruby, and she cried with joy at receiving such a handsome present. The little wooden horse offered to go and help the black horse pull the barge, but the barge people would not hear of it. "You must ride with us this time," they insisted, "and tell us all your adventures. Besides, that is the strongest horse on the river. We bought him with the money we got for the timber the day you pulled the Margarita first into port. He never tires. He must be a big, strong horse." So the little wooden horse stayed with the barge people and told them his adventures till they were far up the canal, and his road to the forest branched away through the fields out of sight of the canal. There he said goodbye to his friends and asked them whether if Uncle Peter should send a load of wooden horses to be sold across the sea, the Margarita would very kindly see them down the canal and put them safely on a ship to the port, or a ship in the port. The barge people promised they would do this without fail, so the black horse drew them away up the towpath, while the little wooden horse struck out across the fields toward the forest. "How pleasant this is, to be going home to my dear master with such treasure," said the little wooden horse. He trundled all through the night, and in the morning found himself on roads that he remembered very well. "Why," said the little wooden horse, "I must be quite close beside Farmer Max's farm. Yes, here are the fields I trundled through on my way to the canal. There is the ditch I hid in and heard him go galloping by. And there, yes, there is the farm itself, more tumble down than ever, with holes in all the roofs." Farmer Max wasn't a very nice farmer, was he? "What a poor little fellow I was then," said the little wooden horse, "so scared and bullied and afraid, with scarcely a penny to my name. Now that I am going home full of riches, I am not afraid any more. I almost believe I feel brave enough to have a look around the farm and risk meeting Farmer Max himself." So saying, the little wooden horse left the safe high road and trundled into Farmer Max's farm. This is not a good idea, guys. You're going looking for trouble. I don't think he should have done that. But anyway, the ducks in the pond saw him first. They stood on their heads and waved their feet at him. The little wooden horse prowled around the corners he remembered best. There were heavy hay carts he used to pull, more battered than ever, with their wheels falling off. There was the lane to the fields, with even deeper ruts and puddles in them than he remembered. There was the little shed in which he had been locked many and many a night, and where he had fallen asleep, tired and miserable, dreaming of Uncle Peter. "I must go and see if the hole is still there that I made," said the little wooden horse, creeping inside the shed where he had once slept. He had hardly entered the shed before there came a tramping in the yard of heavy feet and a loud voice that the little wooden horse knew very well and trembled in spite of himself to hear. It was Farmer Max ordering the men out into the fields. At the same time, the ducks bobbed their heads up out of the water and sang derisively, "Quack, quack, quack." What about the little wooden horse? When Farmer Max threw a stone at them, they ducked their heads under the water again, waving their feet at him. Farmer Max strode around the farm to make sure that all the horses were out and none of the men were missing. "Little wooden horse indeed," he was muttering. "If I ever catch that little wooden horse again, I'll never let him go." The little wooden horse trembled as he heard the farmer go striding by. He hid under the manger where he used to feed, but nobody came in. For all that he did not want to stay another moment. For all that, he did not want to stay another moment in the place, and when Farmer Max had gone, he galloped out of the shed as quickly as his wheels would carry him. He dared not cross the yard to the gate in the open, in case he should be seen. So he began to creep in and out of the sheds, always getting nearer and nearer to the gate and trying to make himself invisible. "That was very unpleasant," said the little wooden horse, as he trundled around the back of the farthest barn. "I was very foolish, little horse, to risk such a danger." And he was turning the corner to bolt through the gate, when whom should he meet face to face but Farmer Max. The little wooden horse froze stiff with terror as he found himself once more in front of the tyrant who had treated him so badly. "Now I am lost forever," said the little wooden horse, and a sob rose in his throat as he thought of his dear Uncle Peter, whom he would now never see again. What was his astonishment when Farmer Max walked straight past him, almost knocking him over as if he had not seen him at all. For some time after he had passed, the little wooden horse stood motionless, trembling with fear, not able to believe his good fortune. Then he made a dash for the gate, and was off down the highway like a flash, not daring to look behind him, for fear he should see the angry farmer hot upon his trail. But nobody followed him, and after a while the little wooden horse slackened his pace. That means he slowed down, while his breath became calmer and his heart beat less violently inside his wooden body. His heart slowed down as well. He began to relax again. I am a very lucky little horse," he whispered to himself. "I am luckier than I deserve for being so reckless." And that's true. You know what reckless means? Reckless means foolish, doing a silly thing. And he did a silly thing by going into that farm to have a look around, didn't he? You always keep away from trouble. You don't go looking for it. He trundled along till midday, when he paused to rest by a hayfield where some other horses were working. To his delight, he recognized them as his companions at Farmer Max's haymaking, and they knew him at once, running up to him to ask his news. When he had told them his adventures, the little wooden horse explained his last visit to Farmer Max and how he had passed quite close to the farmer without being seen at all. "Oh, that is not surprising," said the horses. "Farmer Max never sees anything nowadays. His meanness has made him so short-sighted that unless he is wearing his spectacles, he is nearly blind." Oh, yes, what goes round comes round, guys. Here we have a picture of the little wooden horse meeting with his friends, the other horses from Farmer Max's. Look at them having a nuzzle together. The horses wished the little wooden horse much luck and happiness as he set out again, and soon he was alone once more, with afternoon shadows running to meet him out of the forest that now loomed up to welcome him back. "Truly I am a very lucky little horse," said the little wooden horse. He walked all day and slept the night in the forest. The next day found him still trundling along, a little tired but very happy, till he passed the white house where the little girl lived who had first loved him. "I know it is foolish," said the little wooden horse, hesitating at the gate instead of passing by, "but I should like to take another peep into that playhouse and see if the little girl is still there." and if it is all as fine and splendid as I remember when I went away. So he pushed open the gate and trotted inside. The big house was quiet, just as before, while down the garden the apple trees had not changed. They hadn't changed even a twig. A twig is a tiny wee branch. It's just a wee little branch. The playhouse under the trees had a new coat of green paint, but the door was open, just as it had been the first day the little wooden horse had found it. This time he did not trundle around and round the house. He went straight up to the playhouse door and peeped through the chink, meaning to run away in a moment should the rocking horse open his mouth. But the rocking horse was quite still today, his dignity gone, his paint cracked and scratched. He stood drooping his head with an old cocked hat over one of his broken ears. On the floor, looking as fresh and dainty as ever, the little girl sat rather sadly, mending some torn picture hooks. Although the little wooden horse made no sound, something made her look up, and in a moment she had sprung to her feet and was smothering him with kisses and reproaches. She was scolding him, but she would have been doing it nicely. Oh, my dear, my darling, my naughty little wooden horse. Why have you been away so long? Why haven't you sent me that new, beautiful wooden horse like yourself that your master was to make for me? Where have you been all this time? I've been so lonely. So they sent for my boy cousins to play with me, but they spoiled my rocking horse and scratched my toys and tore my picture books. I didn't want them. I only want a dear little wooden horse like you to play with. The little wooden horse told of his adventures as soon as he was allowed to speak a word for himself, and the little girl listened, her eyes growing rounder and rounder with horror and wonder as he told of all the things he had done. Her eyes had grown rounder and rounder with wonder and fright. With horror and wonder it means fright and wonder at the story, thinking of where he must have been. You use your imagination, Georgie, and you can see it in your mind's eye, can't you? Most of all, she wanted to hear about the 10 little princes and princesses who were going to have 10 little wooden horses, just like the one that Uncle Peter was going to make for herself. And now you mustn't stop 1 minute. You must go back to him, she said, pushing the little wooden horse out of the playhouse door. But one day you must come back and see me and tell me your adventures all over again. The little wooden horse promised that he would do so, and then he trundled away through the forest with his heart bounding higher and higher with happiness, the nearer he got to Uncle Peter. The hours went by, but he was no longer tired. Every path, every tree looked friendly now, and he did not stop to sleep or feed. So the next day, when the sun was high in the sky, the little wooden horse came to the last bit of forest before the little old woman's shed. By now Uncle Peter will have told her about me, he said to himself. She will be kind to me, and perhaps she will be sorry that she threw me into the cabbage bed where the cabbages grow. I think Uncle Peter himself will be sitting in the sun outside the cottage door, and there will be a little curl of blue smoke coming out of the chimney where the little old woman is cooking the midday dinner. I shall trundle up to the cottage door and say, "Hello, Uncle Peter, my dear master," just like that. "Hello, Uncle Peter, my dear master," just like that. "Here I am. Here is your little wooden horse, come back from seeking his fortune, with enough money for us both to live on for ever and ever." That's a lovely thought, isn't it, eh? He passed the last trees, the last rocks. In a moment he would be there. "Now I shall shut my eyes and go on while I count 50, said the little wooden horse. "When I open them again, I shall be round the corner, and the little cottage will be there before me, with Uncle Peter sitting outside the door, just as I have seen it so often in my dreams." So the little wooden horse trundled on, counting 50 as he went, till he had turned the corner and was in the well-remembered glade. That is a gap in the trees. Lovely green gap, usually. "Now I will open my eyes," said the little wooden horse. He opened them wide and looked about him. But now they grew round with surprise and fear, for there was no cottage in front of him, no blue smoke coming out of the chimney, no cabbage patch, no Uncle Peter sitting before the door, no shed, no garden, and no cow house, or cow shed, as we would call. Everything was in ruins, with the weeds rambling in and out of the bricks, as though for a very long time there had been nobody there, until Uncle Peter was gone, and there was no sign of him to be seen anywhere. Look at it. Oh, that does not look good. See that? No roof on the little house. It's a mess. Look at the fence, the boards hanging. The wooden horse will be very unhappy to see that. Okay? Now, I think we are on to the very last chapter. What do you think I should do? Do you think I should leave it? I'll tell you what. I think I'll read it to you, and we'll complete the book today. So here we are. The little wooden horse goes to a wedding. Now, we've already done 47 minutes. So, Mum and Dad, this is a big long one. You might have to cut this book into half, this one into half or thirds, okay? But we'll get the story finished for you. The little wooden horse goes to a wedding. It's called chapter 19. Okay? Right, here we go. And you too, Abigail, are you still listening on, or have you gone away to play? Okay, here we go. The little wooden horse spent the night among the ruins of the cottage. His wooden heart was heavy with misery. He was too wretched even to cry. He was too sad even to cry. The treasure that rattled inside his wooden body did not comfort him at all, for he had collected it for Uncle Peter, and without Uncle Peter, the little wooden horse preferred to die. The next day he rose heavily from his uncomfortable bed and wandered into the forest, not because he thought he would have any luck there, but because he had nowhere else to go. Nowhere else to go. So the little wooden horse began his travels again, trundling through the forest by day, sleeping under the trees by night, hoping against hope that one day he would see or hear something of the dear master he had lost. Now and then he passed through villages where a long while ago he had followed Uncle Peter, selling his wooden toys. At these villages the little wooden horse stopped and asked, "Oh, please, have you seen a poor old man passing by lately? Uncle Peter by name." But the people always shook their heads and said they had never heard of such a fellow. "Then perhaps you have seen a little old woman driving a little brown cow." The little wooden horse persisted. "Perhaps you've seen these things," the little wooden horse persisted. But the people always shook their heads and said they had seen no strangers at all. By and by he came to the end of the forest, beyond which stretched a plain. That's a big, wide land, wider than any he knew, with villages, towns, churches, and farms belonging to strange people who spoke a new language. Surely Uncle Peter would not leave the forest he knows so well, thought the little wooden horse, gazing out across the new country, which looked so vast and strange he did not want to set foot in it at all. So he turned about and trundled back the way he'd come, but choosing new paths and always hoping to hear news of Uncle Peter on the way. At last, when he had worn his paint to a mere scratch of colour, and even the strong iron bands that bound his wheels were wearing thin, the little wooden horse came once more into the glade where the cottage had stood. And now he did not know what to do, or where to go, or what had become of his dear master, Uncle Peter. So he sat down again on the old pile of stones and began to cry large fat tears out of his painted eyes. "I am so lonely," sobbed the little wooden horse, who thought that at last his heart was really broken. There was plenty of company in the glade that morning, however, although nobody noticed the little wooden horse. People in their best clothes were hurrying past the ruined cottage on their way to the forest church, whose joyful bells could be heard through the trees, inviting everybody to come and join in the wedding. Children ran by carrying flowers, old men limped along on sticks, young women hurried past, fastening their ribbons. Everyone was going in the same direction, and for the moment the whole forest was alive with their talk and laughter and bright wedding clothes. When they'd gone, the glade seemed lonelier than ever, while the little wooden horse was tired enough of his own company. "I think I shall go after them and see what is happening in the church," said the little wooden horse, rising from the pile of stones and plodding on his broken wheels in the same direction as everyone else had gone. When he arrived at the church, all the guests were already inside, for the wedding had begun. But outside, an argument was going on between the driver of a wagonette, that's a small wagon, that was to take the bride and the bridegroom to their new home, and the owner of the horse, who was insisting that he had only been paid to bring them to church. In vain the driver insisted that money had been paid for both journeys, that the bride and the bridegroom were poor, and that anyway it had all been settled before. The owner of the horse would not listen to him, and when he found out that not another penny was to be had, he unharnessed his horse and led him away. While the driver wrung his hands and stamped up and down in despair, calling himself the most unfortunate of drivers, and wondering what on earth the bride and bridegroom were going to do. The little wooden horse was very kind-hearted. He did not like to see anyone in distress, besides which he longed for company and liked to help people when he could. So he went gently up to the driver of the wagonette and offered to pull it for him. "For I am a strong little horse and a quiet one," he said, remembering how he had helped to pull the king's coach around and round the city. The driver was so grateful that he had not yet finished his thanks when the little wooden horse was harnessed to the wagonette, by which time the bells were pealing again and the guests coming out of the church. The driver hastily backed the wagonette up to the church door as the bride and bridegroom appeared. And although the little wooden horse could see nothing, for he was facing the wrong direction, he felt he was being very useful, and this warmed his lonely little wooden heart. All the guests shouted and waved their handkerchiefs as the bride and bridegroom side by side, as the bride and bridegroom side by side into the wagonette left the church at a spanking trot. The spanking trot is a bright pace, you know. The horse was trotting along at a really happy, bright pace. After all, they only just got married, didn't they? The driver cracked his whip, and the little wooden horse bowled merrily along thinking how nice it was to work for somebody again and to do good turns to people who could not help themselves. But although he was a steady little horse and a quiet one, and had seen 100 strange things in his travels, so that he never expected to be taken by surprise again, the little wooden horse, nearly fell over backwards when there came a long sigh from behind. That's a long sigh. And there's a picture of the bride and the groom in the wagonette, and the little wooden horse towing them along, and the driver. Sorry, can you see that there? There we go. Look at the little wooden horse up there. I think there's going to be a surprise for all of us here, guys. I think there's going to be a very happy surprise for us all here. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. The driver cracked his whip, and the little wooden horse bowled merrily along, thinking how nice it was to work for somebody again and to do good turns to people who could not help themselves. I've read that, haven't I? But although he was a steady little horse and a quiet one, and had seen 100 strange things in his travels, and I've read that before, so that he never expected to be taken by surprise, the little wooden horse nearly fell over backwards when there came a long sigh from behind him in the wagonette. I just about read all of that before, hadn't I? And a voice that he knew asked, "Why, my dear good soul, what can be the matter with you to sigh like that on your wedding day?" For the voice that replied was Uncle Peter's, and the bride and bridegroom whom he was driving to their new home were none other than Uncle Peter and the little old woman from the cottage in the wood. So they were the people that got married in the church, Uncle Peter and the little old woman. "Well, well, well," sighed Uncle Peter. "We all have our joys and our sorrows, I suppose." "Ah," said the little old woman, "I know what you're thinking of. You are sighing for your friend, the little wooden horse, whom I chased away so cruelly from my door when you were ill many months ago. You will never be happy till he is found." "I shall never find him now," said Uncle Peter. "He would have come back long ago if he'd been alive. How differently I would treat him if he were alive now," wept the little old woman. "Oh, oh, oh, I shall never forgive myself for what I did that terrible day." Now Uncle Peter had to comfort her, which he did by putting his arm about her shoulders and calling her his dear little old woman, his little old wife. For calling his dear little old woman his dear little old wife. Because his wife now. Okay? He's a married wife, husband and wife, like mummy and daddy. Okay? He talked to her of the new house he had built for her with his own hands in the wood when hers had fallen down, and how they were going to live there, poor but happy for the rest of their lives. "Ah, but now you will never be perfectly happy without your little wooden horse," sobbed the little old woman. All this while the little wooden horse could hardly contain himself for excitement. He frisked and hopped from one side of the road to the other, till the driver wondered if he'd been wise to rely on a perfectly strange little horse, who might after all upset them all and leave them in a ditch. So he was quite glad when they came in sight of the little wooden house that Uncle Peter had built in the wood for himself and the little old woman to live in. The little wooden house was glad too, for 1,000 times on the journey, not the little wooden house. Granddad got that a bit wrong. I'll start again. The little wooden horse was glad too, for 1,000 times on the journey he had nearly cried out, "Here I am, Uncle Peter. Here is your little wooden horse," alive and well. But he kept his mouth tightly shut and waited till they had drawn up before the newly painted door. To draw up means to come up to. Before they had drawn up, before they had come up to the newly painted door. Okay. Oh, we've got a couple of pages left yet. There Uncle Peter put his hand in his pocket to give the driver a coin, while the little old woman ran into the house for a lump of sugar to give to the horse that had drawn the wagonette, that had pulled the wagonette. Suddenly she threw up her hands with a scream that brought Uncle Peter running to her side. Uncle Peter, come quickly and tell me if I have lost my senses, or is that your little wooden horse that I drove from my door so cruelly so many months ago? But now the little wooden horse could not stand still any longer. With a piercing whinny of joy, he sprang out of the harness, dropped the shafts to the ground, and ran into Uncle Peter's arms. Never had there been such a wedding feast. There was the little old woman bustling in and out with a dozen new dishes, each better than the last. There was Uncle Peter, almost too happy to eat, jumping up to kiss his now little old wife, now his little wooden horse, and the little wooden horse himself, at the end of all his troubles, gazing and gazing at his dear master with such affection in his painted eyes that the little old woman cried with joy to watch them both. And when the good things were eaten and the table cleared, the little wooden horse took off his head and poured out of his wooden body the treasure that had been found on Pirate Jackie's island. The diamonds, the rubies, the emeralds, the pearls, all sparkling and gleaming like a magnificent dream, while Uncle Peter and the little old woman, their eyes round with wonder, listened over and over again to the story of his adventures. There was enough money there to keep them wealthy forever, to buy corn for the land, a new cow, cabbages for the cabbage patch, a hive of bees, clothes, wool, comforts of every kind, and best of all, new wood and paint, so that Uncle Peter could begin his new horses, the first for the little girl, the rest to be sent over the sea to the 10 little princes and princesses. The miner's boy, hello, Mama, the miner's boy, the circus master, the shopkeeper, and last of all, 5 particularly strong ones for the 5 noisy children who had used the little wooden horse so roughly. Oh, what joy the little wooden horse had brought to the old woman and to his master, Uncle Peter, who could now make toys to his heart's content, but only for those children who pleased him, or for those who had none of their own, had no toys of their own. I shall never leave home again, said the little wooden horse, for the old woman too loved him now, and he was tired of travelling. But in the long winter evenings, when the fire burned brightly on the hearth and the wind howled outside, while the little old woman bustled around the kitchen, busy with pots and pans, and while Uncle Peter carved wooden legs and wooden heads and wooden bodies and painted red saddles and blue stripes on his new horses, the little wooden horse, content in his own corner, would go over and over his adventures again in imagination, from Farmer Max to Pirate Jackie, from the King's coach to the last journey with the barge people up the canal. For I am a quiet little horse, and forever after I shall be rather a dull one, he said, but I shall always be the luckiest little horse in the world. And there goes the little wooden horse, Uncle Peter and his little old wife, all round the hearth with the fire in the fireplace. The hearth is the flat piece in front of the fire. The fire is built at the back of the hearth. Okay? Beautiful. And that, my 2 little kiddly winkets, is as they say. That. End of the book. The end. Adventures of the Little Wooden Horse. Okay, guys. So the next one will be a new book. And I'm not quite sure which one yet, but we'll find out. Okay? So until next time, Poogle.
Poogle, guys. Love you.
And we'll see you next time, okay? Okay, see you later.